tried and tested and true methods to get your alocasia to grow bigger. Hello, I'm Lauren, that awkward plant girl. Welcome back to my channel. It's so good to see you guys. Thank you guys for popping in. Today we're going over my top 5 alocasia care tips. These are the care tips that I feel have made me the most successful with alocasia, that are the most important with alocasia, and you should be implementing them as well. And this will be a game changer if alocasia are a species that you are struggling with. Okay, so my first alocasia care tip is to keep your alocasia warm. So alocasia are subtropical plants. They like it to be really nice and toasty warm. The biggest mistake that we can do is putting them in a place that is 60 degrees or lower. Unfortunately, they really don't like the cold. I agree with them. I'm not a fan of cold. It's got to be a balmy 72 or I am freezing. I have a lot of family members though that like to keep that thermostat at like 61 degrees, 62 degrees, and that's just going to be pretty chilly.
The Iceman coming.
So if you do have alocasia, you do have central heating, or in the winter time when alocasia tend to go dormant, it's not really dormancy, it's just they're not going to be producing leaves because they're cold. They don't want to do things. When you get cold, you want to snuggle up in a blanket and go to sleep. That's just how it is. Alocasia are the same way. They're cold, they don't like it, they're not going to do anything. So what you can do to fix that is to keep them away from air conditioning, give them a completely separate room where they're going to be kept nice and warm and toasty. In the wintertime, you can also give them a heat mat. So I have a radiator heater up here in the wintertime because I live in a cold, drafty farmhouse. It was built in 1901. It's needless to say, insulation is not what it is now.
It's a bit drafty in the winter.
I love this place, but there's definitely it gets colder up here. And I keep my alocasia going all year round. They do not go dormant. Even if the temperature drops overnight, I'm going to keep those heat mats on all the time. And that's going to keep my alocasia from dropping leaves and turning into a stump and just overall struggling through the winter time. I still get spider mites.
It's showtime.
But that's just going to happen because the alocasia are not inside plants, really. We're trying to make them inside plants, but they're subtropical outdoor plants. But yeah, the number one thing that you can do to keep your alocasia happy is just keep it toasty, keep it in a warm spot, give it some love. It likes tropical and humid. Speaking of humid, the next step that you can take for your alocasia to keep it happy is humidity. Keep that humidity 50% or higher. They love their humidity. They are, like I said before, they're tropicals. They grow in very moist, wet areas. They're going to have a lot of ambient humidity around them naturally. Their foliage grows nice and big so that they can keep ambient humidity around their roots, and that's how they're going to thrive. Make sure you get some measuring tool to measure the humidity and the temperature in your home. It's going to be the number one thing to help you. You can get them for $6 on Amazon and just stick them wherever, just somewhere around your plants, so that way you know exactly what's going on around your plants. So once you know what your ambient humidity is, you can go ahead and take steps to adjust as needed. If you want to raise your ambient humidity more than 5 or 10%, then you are going to want a humidifier to do that. You want to calculate how many cubic feet your room is, and then you want to go and check the actual description of the humidifier and make sure that it's going to work in a room of that size. Generally speaking, it'll probably be a 1 to 2 gallon humidifier for most rooms. You don't have to get a super huge humidifier, and check the baby area because a lot of times they'll have clearanced out baby humidifiers that are going to be cheaper than plant humidifiers. So definitely look into those. Humidifiers don't have to be a big expensive thing. I got mine for about $40. That one lasted about 9 years, and then after that one came out, I got one for $14. That works okay. It's not my favorite. I don't really run it that often, honestly, because it's kind of a pain to do things with. So the next alocasia care tip really quick is going to be topping your alocasia with sphagnum moss. And what that's going to do is keep the ambient humidity up a little bit around the root base specifically. Well-draining mixes tend to evaporate the moisture faster. So if you're trying to keep that moisture in there a little bit longer, extend your watering times and increase the humidity around the root base of your plants a little bit, that's going to happen when you top it with the sphagnum moss. You just take sphagnum moss, you soak it for maybe about 20 to 30 minutes, squeeze out the excess water, and literally pop it on top around the roots of your plants. Or around the base of your plants. It's so easy. And you just make sure that you're top watering. This works for bottom watering as well, but depending on how well draining your mix is, if it's mostly perlite, then the water is not going to wick up as well, and that is going to keep the sphagnum moss dry on top. Also, touching the sphagnum moss is a really easy way to tell whether your alocasia needs water or not. So as long as it's not in a cache pot and it's just a regular pot, if the top layer of the sphagnum moss has completely dried out, you put your finger in there, you feel that there's no moisture on top, that's when you need to water your alocasia. So it's a really good hack for that as well. My next biggest care tip for alocasia is to fertilize your plant regularly. If you have an alocasia that's putting out a leaf, dropping a leaf, putting out a leaf, dropping a leaf, it's not getting the nutrients it needs. That's the problem right there. Now, if it's putting out a leaf and the leaf is starting to die before it's even out, that's probably a humidity issue. But the putting out a straight leaf and then another leaf dying right around the same time that you're putting it out, it's taking the energy from the old leaf to put forth the new leaf. So you have to fertilize it. Liquid fertilizer works really, really well. I personally like Dynagrow. You can use a slow release fertilizer. That may or may not be enough. It depends on the specific slow release fertilizer. Liquid fertilizer works really, really well because it goes right down to the roots of your plant and it's already broken down and water soluble. So your plants are able to soak it up immediately. So it's like giving them an already cooked super good meal instead of having to wait. So it's just going to hit your plant really, really well, especially alocasia. I just plop it in the water, and then every time I water my alocasia, it's just right in there. Super, super easy. Alocasia are heavy feeders, so if you miss a fertilizer or you don't fertilize them, then they're going to be dropping leaves. There are rumors out there that alocasia can only have like 2 or 3 leaves at a time, sometimes even 4. I believe the max in the rumor out there is 5. This is not the case. I have had alocasias with up to 8, 9, 10 leaves, and that's just one plant. So if you look in the wild, you can see that they have even more leaves than that because they're constantly getting nutrients and they have an amazing light and they have the humidity and they have the exact pH of the soil they need and they can be doing exactly what they need to be doing. So the number of leaves is just the reflection of our care that we're able to give them. It's not like a hard and fast rule. There is nothing like that. That's totally a myth. So if you want to get your plant out of the 2-leaf club, out of the 1-leaf club, you want to get more leaves on your alocasia, definitely make sure you are fertilizing regularly. And this last alocasia care tip, I don't think anybody has ever really talked about as an alocasia care tip. They have talked about it as a propagation method, which it works really well as well, but it should be part of a standard care in my honest opinion because it is mind-blowing. Stratum. Alocasia absolutely love stratum. You could propagate them in it, you can grow them in just straight stratum for a long time until they get about 3 leaves and their leaves are about this big. Once they're about 3 inches long, 4 inches long, then they're going to start needing a little bit more substance to hold on to than the stratum. What I'm currently doing is sprinkling stratum in even my bigger pot. I just sprinkle the stratum in the pot and then I top it with sphagnum moss. And that's going to help keep the moisture. Stratum is basically little balls of dirt. They basically use little tiny balls of dirt that they have inoculated with specific bacteria to help plants grow. It's generally used in aquarium settings, especially for plant growing aquariums. They also have a stratum that comes with a red label that is for shrimp. It works for plants, but it does not work as well as the one actually designed for plants. But this natural bacteria that they have in there really, really helps plants grow. It helps them wick up moisture, it helps them wick up nutrients, and it's just a total game changer. Now, most of my plants love to be sprinkled with stratum. I am not sponsored by stratum, by the way. I am just singing their praises because I've been using them for well over a year now, and it's actually been almost 2 years now that I've been using stratum, and it's been a complete game changer. I've grown plants in my terrarium tanks in just stratum. I've tried it with a bunch of different plants, but alocasia are the ones that I go back to and I make sure to put it on every single time because the behavior of the alocasia, the growth of the alocasia, and the speed at which they recover and can fight off pests is completely and totally different from when they have stratum to when they don't have stratum. It's incredible. We'll talk about an Alocasia standard mix another day, but definitely make sure that even if your Alocasia are just sitting there in the standard potting mix, you don't want to repot them, get some stratum, sprinkle some stratum on top, and water over it. Try to mix it in a little bit so that it stays more moist and that bacteria can grow. Stratum is Alocasia's best friend. It's totally like a well-kept secret. I wish I knew about it sooner. And it's the go-to way to propagate my Alocasia, especially if I'm propagating them from corms. It has completely transformed my plants, and I absolutely freaking love it. That and Dynagrow are the only ones that I have set up to regularly purchase every 3 months because I absolutely know that I am going to need them and use them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!